Hey guys, this is Cambridge IGCSE Biology Major 2020 Paper 23. Question 1. The diagram shows what happened in an experiment with plant seedlings. At first, the plants were standing upright. Then, the next day, since the light is coming from this direction, they started to bend towards the light. Which characteristic of living things made the seedlings grow towards the light? Now, this is a very common thing where plants grow towards the light. Well, in order to grow towards the light, you'll have to sense that light is coming from this direction. So the answer is sensitivity. Question 2. A rat has the scientific name Rattus rattus. What do the two parts of this name refer to? They refer to the last two names of naming an organism, which are the genus and species. The name should always be in italics, and the first letter of genus should be in capital letter. Question 3. Onion plant cells swell but do not burst when placed in distilled water. Which cell component prevents the onion plant cells from bursting? Okay, cell membrane controls the movement in and out of the cell, so it's nope. Then cell wall, yeah, they're the ones that help you to keep the shape of the cell. Then nucleus, nope, they're just like the brain of the cell. They do not provide any physical support. Then vacuole, this is mainly for storage and where some chemical reactions occur, so no. The answer is cell wall. Question 4. The diagram shows an onion plant epidermal cell. The distance between X and Y in the diagram is 60 millimeters. The actual length of the cell between X and Y was 150 micrometers. What is the magnification of the cell? Well, to calculate the magnification, you'll have to divide the distance on the diagram with the actual length, then multiply by 100. But be careful, these two have different units, so let's change micrometers into millimeters. To do that, you'll have to multiply by 10 to the power of negative 3 or just divide it by 1000. So that will give us 0.150. Now, the distance on the diagram divided by the actual length multiplied by 100 equals to 400. Therefore, the answer is C. Question 5. Which diagram shows the appearance of a plant cell several minutes after it has been placed in a concentrated solution of sugar? If it's a concentrated solution of sugar, it means that there is very low water potential. So if there's very low water potential, the water inside the cell will go out of the cell. You have to choose a diagram which shows that water has went out of the cell. It won't be B or C because it looks normal and it doesn't look like any water has escaped from it. Then we have A and D, but again, D, it's just the vacuoles that are somehow divided in three parts, and the cell membrane is still stuck with the cell wall, so nope. So it's A, where we can see that the cell membrane is shifted away from the cell wall. Question 6. The diagram shows two adjacent plant cells. Cell X has high water potential, cell Y has low water potential. Which statement describes what will happen to the water in the cells? Alright, osmosis is where water molecules move from high water potential to low water potential. So water will move from cell X to cell Y. Therefore, the answer is B, where that movement from X to Y occurs. Question 7. The diagram shows a section of DNA with 4 bases identified on one strand. Which sequence of bases would be on the other strand starting from the top? Oh, you have to memorize these pairs. A is with T and G is with C. G, then C, A, T, C, G, T, A. C, T, G, A. Easy mark. Question 8. Which food testing solution shows a positive result when it turns from blue to purple? So this means that originally the solution should be blue, while Benedict solution and Burette solution are both blue in the beginning, but Benedict solution never turns purple. They are just green, yellow, orange, or red, so it's Burette. The solution turns purple when protein is present. And of course, ethanol has no color. Iodine is brown, so they're not the answer. Question 9. Which statement about enzyme-controlled reactions is correct? For this kind of questions, make sure you read all the options. I mean, it applies to all the other questions as well, but be extra careful. During the reaction, a substrate changes into a product. Okay, that makes sense. The enzyme is slowly broken down during the reaction. Well, no, because the enzyme does not go through any change. The higher the pH, the faster the reaction. Well, this may apply to some enzymes, but it's not always the case, so nope. And the product is gradually used up during the reaction. And nope, you're just trying to produce a product, so the product will not get used up. The answer is A. Question 10. Increasing temperature above the optimum for the enzyme results in loss of enzyme activity. How is this explained? Less frequent collisions between the enzyme and the substrate? Well, no, actually, if you increase the temperature, there will be more collisions. Then reduced kinetic energy of the enzyme molecule. Nope, there will be higher kinetic energy. Then substrate molecules move faster and effective collisions are less likely. Now, if they move faster, there will be more effective collisions, so this is not the answer. Then the shape of the active site is changed and the substrate will no longer fit into it. Yes, this is the exact answer for why in high temperatures there will be decreased or no enzyme activity, because the shape of the active site is changed. Question 11. The diagram shows how the rate of photosynthesis varies with light intensity. The four curves show different conditions of temperature and carbon dioxide concentration. So starting from the bottom, we have 20 degrees, 0.1% CO2. Then the temperature increased to 30 degrees and the overall rate of photosynthesis increased. Okay, then compared to the first graph where it was 20 degrees and 0.1%, for the third graph, it increased to 20 degrees and 0.2%. So only the carbon dioxide concentration increased, but the rate of photosynthesis still increased. So we can see that when you increase the temperature, the rate of photosynthesis increases. Then when you increase the concentration of carbon dioxide, the rate of photosynthesis again increases. Alright, the question says, what limits the rate of photosynthesis at point P? Well, what we have just found out is that both the temperature and the carbon dioxide concentration affects the rate of photosynthesis, and they are actually the limiting factors. So our answer should be C. Question 12. Why do plants need nitrate ions? From amino acids, fats, glucose, starch. Nitrate ions are directly related to amino acids, so it's A. Question 13. The table shows the percentage of the daily recommended intake of nutrients in a serving of 4 foods. Which food would be the best choice to prevent scurvy? Scurvy is a disease that you get when you lack vitamin C. Therefore, in order to prevent scurvy, you'll need to take in food that has high percentage of vitamin C, which is option C. Question 14. The diagram shows a villus in the small intestine. What is absorbed at X? So X is pointing at the lacteal. And this is where you absorb fatty acids and glycerol. So our answer will be A, fats. Well, to go through the other parts of the diagram, the outer part is the epithelium cells. They are microvilli to increase surface area for absorption. And these guys are the blood vessels, which are blood capillary. Glucose and amino acids are absorbed from these parts. Question 15. Samphire is a plant that grows in coastal areas. It has adaptations that enable it to live in areas with high salt concentration in the soil and low water potential. Which adaptations would samphire possess to minimize water loss from root cells by osmosis and leaves by evaporation? In order to not lose water by osmosis in root cells, firstly, you need to have a very low water potential inside the root cells. This will help prevent water molecules from moving out of the cells, but instead, there will be more water molecules moving into the cell and to have high salt concentration in root cells. So think of water potential and salt concentration in an opposite way, and this is a very common type of question. This kind of questions were out for years and years, so make sure you understand this. Alright, then the leaf surface area to prevent water loss by evaporation. Obviously, the surface area should be very low. So the answer is B. Which row correctly states the pair of conditions that will result in the highest rate of transpiration? So transpiration is where water molecules start moving up the stem of the plant and evaporate through the leaves and overall lose water. Well, to have highest rates of transpiration, the temperature should be high. This will cause more evaporation and there will be more transpiration. Then the humidity. So the humidity that they're talking about is the humidity of its surroundings. Well, the humidity should be low so that there is overall less water potential around the plant and there will be faster rate of evaporation from the leaves. So the answer is A. Question 17. The diagram shows some veins in the human arm and the valves that they contain. If blood is squeezed out of section XY, where should pressure be placed on a vein to stop blood flowing into this section again? You have to identify these valves, so they help you to identify the direction of the blood flow. Let's say this is the blood vessel and we have the valves like this. The blood will flow in this direction. And the valves are there to prevent the backflow of blood. For example, if the blood tries to flow in this way, the valves will immediately close to prevent the blood flowing in the wrong direction. Therefore, when you see this kind of diagrams, you should immediately know that, oh, blood is flowing in this direction. Anyway, if blood is flowing in this direction, you will obviously have to hold this part and block the blood flowing further down the vein. It's kind of a common sense question. You just need to know which direction the blood flows by looking at the valve and just stop the blood from where it's coming from. Question 18. The diagram shows some of the blood vessels leaving and returning to the heart. Which row is correct for blood vessels X and Y? Okay, name of blood vessel X, it's going to the heart from the body. It's called the vena cava. Now you have to, of course, memorize the structures of the heart and the blood vessels around it. It's going back to the heart, so it should be deoxygenated. Okay, then the name of blood vessel Y, it became quite obvious what the answer is, but anyways, it's coming from the lungs to the heart, and that is called the pulmonary vein. And since it has just passed the lungs, the blood will be oxygenated. Question 19. Vaccinations can be given to gain active immunity. Which statement about this type of vaccination is correct? Alright, the word that you need to put your focus on is active because there is something called passive immunity as well, and that's a whole different thing. So vaccination contains antibodies. No, this is not an active, this is a passive immunity. The vaccination must contain harmful pathogens. No, you don't necessarily need the exact pathogens, you just need to insert the antigens. So no, the vaccination triggers antibody production in the body. Yep, this is exactly what the active immunity is about. It triggers the antibody production, and the next time you're exposed to the same type of pathogen, your body will just automatically produce antibodies. Then part D, it says the vaccination triggers antigen production in the body. Okay, antigen is something that's on the pathogens. And why would you take vaccinations to produce pathogens? Like, it doesn't make sense. So no. Question 20. The diagram shows an alveolus and capillary in a human lung. This is a famous diagram as well. Which row shows the correct gas and concentrations for diffusion from X to Y in normal conditions? At point X, so we have to choose if there is high concentration of carbon dioxide or oxygen or just low concentration of them. Okay, you have to know that air is coming in from this direction to here, like this. And why do you breathe in air? It's for oxygen. So oxygen's coming from here, then carbon dioxide will be going out like this. So at point X, it's where oxygen has just entered. There should be high concentration of oxygen. Okay, then at point Y is where it's waiting to receive oxygen and it's diffusion, so oxygen moves from high concentration to low concentration, so obviously there should be low concentration of oxygen in point Y. So the answer is B. And you might wonder why it's not about carbon dioxide. Well, as I've just drawn these arrows here, oxygen travels in this direction. And if you look at the diagram, it's from X to Y. So they're only talking about the movement of oxygen and not carbon dioxide. So options A and C can never be the answer. Question 21. The symbol equation for airway respiration is shown. Which numbers represent the letters shown in the equation as X, Y, and Z? Alright, even if you don't know anything from biology, and even if you don't take IGCSE Biology, you need to know the equation of airway respiration. There's no way that you don't know this. C6H12O6 plus 6O2 gives 6CO2 plus 6H2O. That makes X12, Y6, Z2. The answer is D. Question 22. Blood glucose level is kept between 5 to 7 millimole per dm cube. The concentration of glucose in the intestine varies and is often less than that value. What would be required for the absorption of glucose into the blood when the concentration of glucose in the intestine is less than 5 millimole per dm cube? In order to make your blood to absorb glucose, we have three options. So first one, mitochondria. Okay, I'm sure everybody in the whole world knows that mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Basically, they help you to carry out the aerobic respiration and produce energy. And when you carry out aerobic respiration, you use up glucose. Therefore, when you have mitochondria, you'll be absorbing more glucose. And also oxygen is used up to carry out aerobic respiration, so it's also correct. Then we have membrane proteins. Now don't focus on the word membrane, it's about the proteins that are positioned at the cell membrane. They are there to carry out active transport of glucose into the intestine, meaning these are directly connected to each other. 3 is also the answer, and the final answer is D. Question 23. The diagram shows a synapse between a motor neuron and a relay neuron. What passes from P to Q? An electrical impulse? Well, you might get confused, but no. Enzyme? Of course no. Hormone? Of course no. It's a neurotransmitter. There's only one thing. It's a neurotransmitter. Question 24. What change occurs in a fight or flight situation? In case you don't know what this is, it's like a situation where you either have to fight the person or just fight whatever that's going on, or you just escape because you can't do anything about it. Basically means it's an emergency situation where your body suddenly needs to adapt to overcome that situation. A constriction of pupils. No, your pupils need to dilate to absorb as much light as possible and be able to observe what's going on. Decrease in breathing rate? No, the breathing rate will increase so that there will be higher rate of respiration and produce more energy. Then decrease in pulse rate? No, of course your heart rate will increase. And then increase in blood glucose concentration. Yeah, this is so that you can have higher rate of aerobic respiration and produce more energy to fight that situation. Question 25. What happens when a person enters a very hot room? If it's hot, obviously your sweating increases. Then is it vasoconstriction or vasodilation? Your blood vessels will need to expand, especially the ones near the skin surface, so that there will be higher rate of heat loss through radiation, and it will help you to lower your body temperature. So the answer is D, sweating increases and vasodilation increases. Question 26. Which disease is caused by a virus? AIDS. AIDS is caused by HIV. Yep, you can tell from it, it's a virus. While kwashiorkor, this is caused by deficiency in protein. Then cholera, this is by a bacteria. MRSA infection, this is also bacteria. So the answer is A. Question 27. Which row describes cross-pollination? Pollen transferred from anther to stigma of, okay, a different flower on the same plant. No, that won't happen. A flower on a different plant of same species. Yeah, so you might get confused by the word cross-pollination, like does it pollinate itself? No, that's self-pollination. Cross-pollination is where a flower and a different plant of same species are pollinated. Alright, then a flower on a different plant of a different species. So this is just a normal pollination and not a cross-pollination. So the answer is C. Question 28. The diagram shows the head of a sperm. What are the functions of structures X and Y? Well, X is, okay, again, this is the famous mitochondria. And like I just said, they carry out aerobic respiration and produce energy. So it's this, releases energy for movement. Then Y, it's the front part of its head. It's called the acrosome. And it contains chemical that can help it to enter the egg cell. So it's definitely not energy store, and it's more of digestion of egg cell jelly coat. The answer is B. Question 29. Which row describes what happens in the production of proteins? What forms the genetic code? The genetic code is formed by the sequence of bases. It's not amino acids. Don't get confused. And what the DNA codes for is the amino acids. Then what carries a copy of the gene to the cytoplasm? It's the mRNA. So these are just facts that you need to know, so memorize this. Question 30. Which statement about meiosis is correct? Meiosis produces diploid cells. Nope, they produce haploid cells. Meiosis produces genetically identical cells. Oh, nope. They are genetically different. The meiosis produces gametes. Yes, that's correct. This is one characteristic of meiosis. The meiosis produces cells for growth of tissues. No, this is done by mitosis. These three are actually the characteristics of mitosis. And our answer is C. Question 31. The diagram shows the inheritance of ABO blood groups. The blood groups of some of the individuals are given. What could be person 2's genotype? We don't know the blood groups of person 2 and person 4, so let's try to find that out first by studying the genotypes of person 6 and 7. While if your blood type is O, there can be only one genotype, which is IO. And if it's A, there can be two, IA, or IAIO. Now, person 5 is also blood type O, so it should be IOIO. Well, you know that you get one allele from one parent each. So for person 6, one allele IO came from person 4, and another IO allele came from person 5. Then same thing, since person 5 only carries IO alleles, person 7 should have at least one IO allele, which is this. And that shows that the IA allele came from person 4. This tells us that person 4's genotype is IA and IO, according to the alleles of person 6 and 7. Now, person 3 has blood group B, and same thing like A, it can be IB or IBIO. Then person 1 has blood group A, which can be IAIA or IAIO. Since person 1 does not contain any allele for blood group B, IB, it shows that the allele IO has been passed on to person 3, which leads to the conclusion that allele IB is from person 2. So one of the alleles of person 2 is IB. Lastly, person 4 has genotype of IA and IO. Well, this means that person 2 can have two kinds of genotypes. Okay, the first one is when we say that the genotype IA is from person 1 and the genotype IO is from person 2. So then it can be IB and IO. There can be another case if we say that allele IA is from person 2 and allele IO is from person 1. Then the genotype of person 2 can be IA and IB. But we don't have IA and IB in our options, so the answer should be IB-IO. Question 32. In mice, the allele for black hair is dominant to the allele for brown hair. What proportion of offspring will have brown hair if a cross is made between a homozygous black mouse and a heterozygous black mouse? Let's put the allele for the dominant as capital letter B and allele for brown hair, which is the recessive, as small letter b. If it's homozygous black, there will be 2 capital letter B's. Then if it's heterozygous black, then it will be capital letter B and small letter b. They asked us what proportion of offspring will have brown hair. Now brown hair is the recessive one, so it should be 2 small letter b's. So just draw a table and calculate it. So you can see that the offspring can only be 2 capital letters B and 1 capital letter B and small letter b, which are just homozygous black and heterozygous black. So you'll never get brown hair mouse with 2 recessive alleles, so the proportion is 0%. Question 33. The graph shows the masses of 2 different types of tomato. What can be concluded from the graph? A. Genes do not affect the mass of tomatoes. Well, we can't really tell this from the graph, and I think it does because you can see that for type 1, they're all just here, and for type 2, they're here. So, nope. Then type 1 tomatoes show continuous variation. Yeah, you can see that these bar graphs are stuck with each other. There's no gap between the graphs, so it is a continuous variation. Type 2 tomatoes are sometimes smaller than type 1 tomatoes. No, you can see from the graph that type 2 tomatoes are much bigger. They are at higher range of masses. Type 2 tomatoes show discontinuous variation. No, these guys are also the same. They are continuous variation. The answer is B. Question 34. Which adaptation may be present in a xerophyte? Leaves with small surface area and large number of stomata. Alright, having a small surface area is a good stuff, but having large numbers of stomata? No, you need small numbers of stomata so that there will be less water loss due to evaporation or transpiration. Little or no xylem tissue and leaves with large surface area. Okay, you need xylem tissue because you need to transport water efficiently across the plant. And of course, there should be small surface area to reduce the loss of water by evaporation. Stomatal hairs and rolled leaves. Okay, this is a good point. These hairs prevent water loss and the rolled leaves reduces the surface area. Thin or no cuticle and deep roots. Okay, deep roots are fine, but if you have no cuticle, the water molecules in the leaves will start evaporating faster. You need these leaves to reflect the light and prevent too much sunlight being absorbed. The answer is C. Question 35. The diagram shows a food chain in a rock pool. Seaweed, whelks, crabs, seagulls. What will happen if the number of secondary consumers increases? You might get confused seeing the word secondary that they're talking about the second one. But nope, they are talking about crabs because the first one is the producer, then primary consumer, then secondary. So if the crabs increases, then they're gonna consume more food, leading to reduced number of whelks. And if there is reduced number of primary consumers, there will be increased number of producers. And also if the secondary consumers increase, the seagulls will increase as well as they have more food to consume. So the option that matches this is C, fewer whelks, and the rest are all wrong. Question 36. What is defined as all of the populations of different species in an ecosystem? This is called a community. This is why you still need to memorize the definitions for paper 2 exams. I can give questions like this. Question 37. What is the role of anaerobic respiration in bread making? To produce alcohol to flavor the bread. No, you actually use up alcohol, so no. To produce gas to make the bread rise. Yep. As a product of anaerobic respiration, carbon dioxide will be produced, and this is the gas used. And to release enough energy to bake the bread. No, you don't use energy from anaerobic respiration to bake the bread, you use the energy from the oven or something. To release enough lactic acid to kill the yeast. This is definitely a wrong answer. You need to use the yeast to make the bread, and you're not trying to kill the yeast. The answer is B. Question 38. A crop plant has been genetically modified to make it resistant to herbicides. Which is a possible disadvantage of introducing this new crop plant? Loss of weeds reduces competition. Now, they asked about disadvantage, and reducing competition, that's an advantage, so no. Some weeds might become resistant to the herbicides. Yeah, if they start becoming resistant to herbicides, then you'll need a stronger herbicides, or no herbicide may work at all to kill off the weeds. So the problem gets more complicated. And the crop plant is unharmed and produces a higher yield. Again, this is an advantage. So don't get confused even though it sounds correct. The new gene will appear in new generations of the crop. This isn't a bad thing as well, it's an advantage. If this new gene appears that is resistant to herbicides, you won't even have to modify the plants anymore, and they will naturally be resistant to herbicides. Question 39. Chickens are birds that are farmed to produce eggs for human consumption. A type of chicken has been bred to lay more eggs. Which method would be used to produce this type of chicken? A. Sexual reproduction. Nope. Biotechnology. Oh, that's going to be very complicated, and there's a simpler method than that, so we don't use that. Natural selection. Nope. They are farmed to produce eggs. So natural selection doesn't really occur, but humans will intervene the breeding. So it's selective breeding where humans purposely choose the chickens that produce much more eggs than the rest of the chickens, and the offspring produced will produce more eggs than usual as well. Question 40. When a river is polluted by fertilizer, the following processes may occur. Increased aerobic respiration for decomposers, increased growth of producers, decreased oxygen concentration in the water. What is the correct sequence for these processes? Okay, we always start with producers. This is the first one. If the fertilizers enter the river, there will be more food for the producers, more nutrients, so they will grow faster. Then after that, we have option 1 and 3. Well, option 3 says decreased oxygen concentration, but no, producers produce oxygen, so there should be increased oxygen concentration. So the next step should be increased aerobic respiration of decomposers. Only then, because it's aerobic respiration, it uses up the oxygen, there will be decreased oxygen concentration in the water. So the answer is 2, 1, 3. That's it for this video. If this video helped you, please like and leave a comment. Subscribe to get ready for your IGCSE exams. Thank you for watching. Stay safe and God bless you guys. Bye!